Greetings, fellow citizens. This is fake Mayor Mike Duggan with an important public service announcement. There is absolutely no doubt about it. The No BS Newshour is 100% on point and accurate, which is why I, fake Mike, implore you to completely ignore it. I mean, seriously, people, why waste an hour of your precious week listening to hard-hitting facts that expose the real truth when you could be attending any one of my 67 weekly press conferences and ribbon cuttings? So remember, if you want the straight bullshit, come see me. And if you want no bullshit, you can listen and watch that other guy on the No BS Newshour. Which is why I'm here to remind you, avoid, ignore, simply do whatever it takes to stay just the way I like you, bamboozled.
You're caught, Mike. Today, exclusively, Detroit is burying its corpses statistically. The murder rate is much higher than you know. Also, the truth behind the woman and the death of her two babies in the casino parking lot because nobody would help. The receipts. Warning, this program contains actual journalism.
Live from downtown Detroit, it's the No Bullshit News Hour with my main man, Charlie LeDuff, and Karen Dumas.
It's just it, breaking this. No more bullshit. No more bullshit.
Yeah, as soon as we get some money, we'll fix it.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, we'll fix that in post. Mike Duggan's Detroit. I've been telling you. Now you've seen it. Now everybody's up in arms. How could a woman and her children freeze to death when hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing in here from Washington? It's worse. Let me tell you about homicide in the city. In Detroit, the corpses don't add up. Nearly 300 more people were murdered during Mike Duggan's first 10 years in office than the city admits. It's the equivalent of an entire year of homicide in Detroit or Los Angeles or 7 years in Flint. It's the saddest thing in the world to be treated like a number. The saddest, except when you're not even a number at all. While the statistical burying of bodies is a betrayal to the beleaguered people of Detroit, it has a positive effect for politicians and police brass around here. When the murder rate goes up, the praise goes up. Let me read you a headline from 2018. Detroit on track to record the fewest homicides since 1966. Here's a headline from 2023. Detroit with the fewest homicides since 1966. Here's another one from 2024. Detroit on pace for fewest killings since 1965. It all came from a police press release, and the monkeys of the media dutifully typed it up. But the truth is more macabre and outrageous. Every murder victim funnels through the county morgue, and it's the medical examiner alone, who determines cause of death. So I asked the Wayne County medical examiner to prepare a spreadsheet for me. The findings. From 2014 through 2023, the medical examiner declared homicide as the cause of death in 3,189 cases. Meanwhile, the Detroit police reported 2,898 to the public. That's what they told us. So where did 291 bodies go? Let's take 2022 as an example. The medical examiner declared 362 homicides that year. Mayor Mike Duggan told the public there was 309. But a close look at the data shows that the police quietly removed 24 victims from the death count, classifying them as justifiable homicides, defined as the intentional taking of another person's life in self-defense or in the defense of another. FBI guidelines require that the police report these killings as well. And Detroit police did report them to the FBI, but never told us. Remember, the medical examiner determines the matter and means of death. The prosecutor decides whether the homicide was legally justified. The police are simply investigators. Since the Wayne County prosecutor keeps no records of justifiable homicides, it's the Detroit police sitting in the back room making their own determination with nobody watching. And with nobody watching, Detroit does Justifiable like no other. Consider Baltimore, a city comparable to Detroit in population and murder. Over the past 2 years, Baltimore reported 4 justifiable homicides to the FBI and the public, by the way. Baltimore reported 4 justifiable homicides in the last 2 years. Detroit, 55. What's more, a Detroiter is 25 times more likely to be forced to kill somebody in self-defense than the average American, according to the FBI data. Now, most everyone thinks they're justified when they kill someone. Then there's the matter of the 123 other people determined by the medical examiner to be the victims of homicide going back to 2014. They simply vanished. They're not in any count. Remember, in 2022, the police reported 309 cases of murder and manslaughter to the public and another 40 justifiables to the FBI, but that leaves 29 people unaccounted for. They simply vanished. No explanation. I caught the city pulling the same statistical bullshit back in 2009. You might have even been there, Karen, with Bing.
I was.
Okay. The chief of police then was fired. He got fired. And for a few years, under Bing, a very honest man, you could actually get things cleaned up back then. Even though the city was in a financial ruin, there were honorable people in City Hall. The chief was fired, and for a few years, the city's law enforcement saw to it that the death tally was balanced. And then the practice under Duggan remetastasized. Duggan, who's now making a weak run for governor, declined to sit for the interview. He took the 5th. When reached by telephone, newly appointed chief of police Todd Bettison said he will review the data, and if the data shakes out, he will call for an audit. So that's something. Now, back in 2016, City Hall released numbers saying violent crime had dropped to levels not seen in 2 decades, right? And then the next year, that blew up in Duggan's face because with no place for crime data to go but up, the police department simply went back, readjusted its violent crime statistics from 2015 and explained it as a computer glitch. Then the police brass claimed another fantastic drop in crime for 2016. It got so cockamamie that in 2017, the FBI, for the first time in its history, refused to accept a police department's crime data. This is what you're getting. The city manipulated numbers to craft and push a message. That message is one of lower crime and violence. But saying it and twisting numbers to back that story up does not make it real. Remember, behind every number is a human being and his family members. They deserve better. No one knows this better than Chris Frazier. I'm going to show you a little video of a man in the neighborhood. The investigation into the murder of his son Dion now molders in the cold case files. His killer's still out there. He said to me, I really don't think they're able to solve a lot of homicides in Detroit. I don't even think they're counting my son. Now I want to welcome in Mike Rakebrandt, the retired New York Police Department homicide detective and co-host of 7-5 Radio. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. And all disclosure, because I respect this guy's mind, I asked him would help with the data. It's all available, right? It's hard to find, but it's there. Mike, you were shocked to hear about that justifiable homicide level. Why?
They're burying the numbers. Any homicide's a homicide, so it should be counted all as one, and then you have subcategories that you could look at to see where it all lies. But they pulled those out of the numbers completely and reported only the ones they consider to be, a criminal homicide rather than all of them together. That changes everything. It changes the outcome of everything. It allows politicians, honestly, to say it's much safer than it actually is. The fact that it's 25 times higher that people have to kill someone to defend themselves in Detroit is a truly sick number, and it's absolutely indicative of just how really violent it is, and the crime is not under control, not even remotely.
Well, Clarence, would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, Charlie. And we've talked about this for a long time, but the whole MO of this administration has been controlling the narrative and manipulating the numbers. And so I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed, but I'm glad now that we're peeling back the layers to see so people can understand it's not as it has been presented.
Yeah. They use this to disguise a lot of stuff, right? Like the city's safer. Why is it safer? Because we gave the police a raise. But the police, when adjusting for inflation, didn't get a raise at all. So, Mike, I know New York got in trouble for faking crime stats a number of years ago, right?
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, it's common, unfortunately, in municipalities where they want to try and make it look one way to the public, but you're doing such a huge disservice because you're making it harder for us to do our jobs. You're making it harder for everything to be done properly. You're making it harder for people who live in those communities. You're not helping, you're hurting. And also they can continue to, keep that political capital that they have to keep trying to stay in power and stay making these decisions. But they manipulate the data all kinds of different ways. They'll take our robberies, say you have a robberies, 50 robberies, but they're all part of one pattern. They'll make it one rather than the 50, They're doing the same thing with these homicides. They're lumping them together. They're lumping multiple homicides into one incident and counting one incident rather than the actual individual homicides. They did a lot of different things. They changed some of the categories of the homicides to like an investigate aided case. Like, it could be an obvious homicide and they'll make it like an investigate case so that it doesn't show up as a homicide on a sheet. And the ME will change it obviously to a homicide, but for the police department sheets, it won't show up as a homicide.
So what was the consequence of faking this shit in New York? Was it cleaned up?
It got cleaned up. The feds came in. They set monitors basically to watch and to look at things, and they pinged them. There was threats of indictments, never really came down, but they cleaned up the process. They got everything back on track, and then it didn't take long, maybe 3 or 4 years before they were back to the same games of cooking the books.
But you ever see people hide bodies? Like, I've been oh, really? I've been doing crime a long time, and the old saying was, yeah, you can fake the numbers, but you can't hide a body, but we're finding out you can.
Oh, yeah, no, you can. We had a female found on the beach in the surf, by passersby, called 911. She was deceased when they found her. She had her pants around her ankles and multiple stab wounds to her stomach and torso. And they deemed it a suicide initially, so they didn't have to carry the homicide number, even though it was a very obvious homicide.
So is New York held to a different standard? I mean, we think about the nursing home deaths, and that governor got in trouble. This governor didn't. So now we're looking at crime stats. They're at least an attempt to penalize them or bring attention to it, and yet Detroit gets off the hook. Yeah.
And as we will dovetail into the young woman and her children dying in the van, in New York, they're held to a higher standard, even if the mainstream media is shit anymore, right? They still want to be on stories. They want to earn their bread, so to speak. So I'll bet you, like the only guy that will even touch this will be George Hunter at the Detroit News. You now see the consequence of underfunding and lying and misdirecting. You look at the people. The people of the city have not been saying, great, this is a marvelous comeback. They don't say it at all. In fact, I went out to the neighborhood. Yeah, we got that video, Mark. Okay, if you're listening, that's good too, because it's just a beautifully shot piece by Ken Beck. It's just a man and his heart. So, Chris Fraser.
My son was murdered last year, May 17th, and we still haven't heard anything to this day.
Chris Fraser had a son named Dion. Dion was gunned down during a family barbecue, an innocent bystander. Across the street is an elementary school.
I was contacted by detectives one time since the homicide. We haven't heard anything else since. When I call them, I never get a return. I'm leaving messages to no avail. Still trying to find out who murdered my son. My son was shot right out here on the street. And just like I said, there's cameras everywhere and they can't seem to solve. I really don't think they're able to solve a lot of homicides in Detroit.
You ever call them? Did they ever call you back?
I talked to an officer one time since the homicide, and he wasn't able to give me any details. He said they were still investigating. I feel like you should be able to be in touch with me to let me know what's going on as far as the case is going. But I haven't, like I said, I haven't heard from anyone.
Now it's come to light. At least 300 homicide victims never made the official murder count during Mike Duggan's term. Too many families do not receive the thorough investigation they deserve.
And it all comes down to him just being another number.
That's all I think. That's how I really feel. I feel like other places where you go, they investigate and they solve homicides. I had an officer tell me one day that if you want to commit homicide, move to Detroit. He told me that out of his own mouth, and that had me discouraged. And I just felt like y'all will never find my son's murderer.
Ask a man like Chris Frazier, who lost his boy. It's the saddest thing to be treated like a number, except, of course, when you're not even a number at all.
My son just had 2 children. I'm a granddad now, and we don't have any answers to his homicide. He never got to meet his children. That was it. My son got shot. That was it. They can't tell me nothing.
We'll do our best then, all right?
Sorry, buddy. Oh, yeah.
I haven't forgot.
You probably the only one ain't forgot.
But people don't matter here, Charlie. And we keep seeing reminders of that. They don't matter.
Mike?
That's disgraceful. That's absolutely disgraceful. That's disgusting. That's really disgusting. And that's you're spot on, both of you. It's about people. These are all, in the NYPD, it's the one police plaza. Like, they'll play games with the numbers, and it's always numbers. And I actually had a screaming match with one of the bosses one time in my detective squad about, the fact that the numbers actually represent real people, the real crimes against real people. They don't get that, though. They just look at it as numbers, and they just play those stupid games with themselves. But that's absolutely disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. There's no reason that should even be occurring at all. You're leaving so many people behind, and you're leaving murderers on the street to commit more murders.
How many murders did you solve in your career in New York City?
We solved over 450 together. I worked on over 1,000. Worked on so many murders. A lot of cold cases, a lot of active ones, the full gamut of murders, everything from domestic violence to serial killers to anything in between. We saw it all.
What I know about NYPD is they take homicide seriously. A lot of shit, break-ins and shit, whatever. It's a big, crowded city, but we have about the same amount of murders as New York City. And
it's a big deal. Yeah.
When you do murder in New York, you're a top cop. That is a job that you do not fuck with. Why can't we have that? Look at this man out there. The man's name was Dion Frazier. If City Hall's listening, he'd like a fucking phone call.
But Charlie, he's one of many.
Yes.
That's not the only one.
But you know what's ridiculous, Karen? That's so right. It's like, we don't even know how many.
Yeah, we don't. But you look at Crime Stoppers, and they cart people out and they're crying and they have the pictures, and it's been 5, 6, 7 years, and they say nothing has happened, but has nothing happened just in terms of public participation or of administrative and departmental response? So nothing is happening anywhere.
Right. All right. So we're going to take a quick break. Please, give a call to our sponsors, visit them, patronize them. They keep this going. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about the children.
I'm Grace Karros, and I'm third generation of American Coney Island. People say Detroit's a comeback city. I say, where you been? We've been here for over 100 years. My family's been here on the same corner, serving our famous proprietary American Coney Island hot dog. So like always, we're keeping things fresh, updated, and new. We'd love to have you come downtown and visit us, but if you can't, you can always go to AmericanConeyIsland.com, order a Coney kit, get it delivered fresh right to your door.
Well, when it rains, the power goes out. And when the power goes out, the internet goes out. When the internet goes out, I call my friend Matt and Bernie at XG Service Group. Look at Bernie here on his hands and knees, giving it everything he's got. Look at that man crack. So busy, he forgot to wear a belt. There's Matt right there getting the board together. That's 734-245-4100 if you need Matt and Bernie to come take care of your voice over internet, your security cameras, off-campus access control, Wi-Fi, and cameras for homes and business. They'll design it for you. You got restaurants, they do drive-through systems, railroad cameras for public safety, total wireless camera systems for your home and business. Yeah, that's right. Call XG Services at 734-245-4100. Archangel, are you an entrepreneur looking for a safe and socially responsible real estate investment? I don't mean to make it sound like this, but it's franchising. You are a caregiver. You buy the product from Archangel. The flow, they staff it for you. They get the property. That's what the investors come in for. And you, like a restaurant, work it off, and eventually you become the owner. The investor gets paid. The caregivers can actually end up being their own bosses. People get to live in communities. They're clean, they're small, they're tight. If you are interested in investing in this, you'll get a better explanation from Archangel. 989-614-0416. Believe me, this is the future. This is what's happening. 989-614-0416.
This message of Uplift is brought to you by business and personal wealth advisor Luke Nowacki, who reminds you that what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but never enter the kingdom of God? But while you're waiting, Nowacki wants you to remember that overreaction is not a sound financial strategy. So call Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748 for sound financial advice.
All right. So, Karen.
Yes, sir.
Young woman finds herself adrift, homeless, 5 children, living in a van. It was 17 degrees the other night. They go to the casino, Hollywood Greektown Casino, and they go to the 9th floor because parking's free, and you can go in and use the bathroom, and you run the car all night to keep warm. The van ran out of gas. And then the next day, a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old are dead. Okay. City's broken about this, right? The whole country's broken. Like, we're sending now secret funds of money going everywhere and people bilking it. And
it's reactive.
And we got the community, the neighborhood, young women, her children dying like that. Now, this strikes me because when my mom was about 33, 34, she had 5 of us 5, and we were on the drift. So this is my people, right? And she called the city homeless hotline for help. Not once, not twice, not 3. I'm hearing from sources more than 3. The last time she called was November 25th, Thanksgiving. They're in the van. They were told no room at the inn. No room at the inn, right? No one was sent to check on them. That's the protocol. You go look, you send a team out. There were no teams available. No teams. No one called her back the next day. So what they did was they taught this woman not to depend on the city. That it's bullshit. And yet, housing and revitalization, the budget is $80 million. $167 million of the COVID money sent to Detroit was supposed to go to homeless and low-income housing. We had a settlement. What things we got here, Mark? Not that one. Not that one. Okay, here's a picture of homeless money. Okay? It's just a stupid diagram. It's just a wheel of bullshit, right? LLCs, groups. Where in there is somebody send a fucking car to go talk to the lady? Where in there is the hotline? Because what's happened here, the city of Detroit, last year, mind you, entered into a 5-year homeless eradication plan, hired some national firm a year ago, and a woman's babies freeze to death. Now, Mike, you do security at a casino, right?
Yeah, on the overnights.
Is the parking free?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have homeless families sleeping up there?
No, we would notice that immediately. We have vehicles that patrol the parking lot.
And what would you do, Mike, if you saw that? I know you got a heart. What would you do?
Well, we'd find them someplace to go. We wouldn't. They're not staying in a vehicle like that. It would be blunt with you. It's criminal. That's absolutely criminal.
Speak the fucking truth.
It's criminal.
Okay, hold on. This is. Hold on a second. Hey, I'm on the air. I'm not going to mention your name, okay? But answer me this. When someone calls the hotline, like this woman, right? You with me? Yep. Okay. There's supposed to be a referral with someone like you to go check on them. Is this correct?
If they are requesting...
Yeah, if they're requesting assistance, yes, which she was. Okay. And could this woman simply drive up to one of the shelters, or does she need a reference and need you to bring them?
Anybody can show up at a shelter and request assistance.
Okay. So anybody can show up at a shelter and request assistance. And if there's no room and it's code blue, it's really cold, the city is required to find them someplace warm to be. Yes?
If there is a code blue issued, which there is right now, all of the shelters in the city are required to take in anybody who presents themselves as being homeless and in need of shelter. If they do not have a bed available, they're supposed to offer them a chair. If they don't have any more chairs available, which means that they're at fire capacity, they're supposed to make arrangements for them to find another shelter location.
Okay.
And arrange transportation for them as well.
Okay, thanks for calling. I'll get back to you after the show, okay? Thank you, bye. They were supposed to find him someplace. Period. 167 million in COVID money. $80 million in housing and revitalization. HUD sends money. Guess what I found? No, take that off, dude. I will tell you when. That comes later. Take that out of there, Mark. All right. Remember Motor City Match? We had the whistleblower and all that? Okay. I was looking around for the budgets that you cannot find. This 5-year eradication, multi-million-dollar contract, and we got people freezing. The city was required to take out of its own budget $6 million and put it into low-income housing, so people aren't homeless, stuff for this woman, because HUD ruled that the city ripped off $6 million for the Motor City Match startup business stuff, $6 million for businesses that didn't have an address. And the mayor was denying the hell out of it, right? Lawsuits trying to ruin the whistleblower. Remember?
I remember.
We know who she is.
Yeah.
Bam. That's what the fuck is going on. Now, what else we got, Mark? We got what are the, not that one. Okay. Give me the blue thing there. All right. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there's two-way emergency disaster comes from two places, FEMA and HUD. Okay. In the last 10 years, who has received the most money from FEMA for individuals and households? Let me give you the rankings in order. Florida, many hurricanes. Texas, a lot of hurricanes. Number 3 is Louisiana, lot of hurricanes. Number 4 would be California. No, it's Michigan. It's Michigan. We're number 4 in disaster relief. Number 4, we don't have cyclones. We don't have wildfires. What the fuck is this?
What we have are reckless elected officials. That's what we have.
It's grubbing, man. It's the scummy politics of money, right? So let me tell you what natural disasters we have. In 2014, Detroit had a once in a millennium flood. In 2016, we had a once in a millennium flood. And then, that was July. August, we had a once in a millennium flood. 2019, once in a millennium flood. 2020, historic rainfall. The dam in Midland bursts. In 2020, would you believe it? What? The storm of a century, Detroit floods. 2021, Grosse Pointe Park in the east side of Detroit. It was the storm of the century, except the pumping plant didn't have any electricity for 3 days. Oh, and then, geez, 2023, a storm of a century. I must be getting so used to storm of the century that I don't even remember 2023. But Washington did, and Mike did, because look what we got here. All the money going around, and Granholm sent him $14 billion to the Michigan power companies. The Duggan administration was awarded $346.7 million, a third of $1 billion, to prevent basement flooding. And you got it, affordable housing. And there's no strings attached to this. So, hey, Doge, if you're listening, you might want to look into that one. And I got about a dozen others if you got time. So, in 2021, all the freeways flooded, storm of the century, except 28 pumping stations along the highway just broke down. That's not storm of the century. This is infrastructure. It's corruption. And I'll remind everybody, former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick went to prison for what? Corruption in the water department, sewage, plumbing. We're getting raked here, and people are fucking freezing to death. In 2021, Grosse Pointe and Detroit Red, and your sister.
My sister.
They didn't get much FEMA money, did they?
They didn't get any.
They didn't get any FEMA money, but it was declared a natural disaster. By the way, bookmark. Made me get back to natural disaster. I looked up, because I'm a fucking freak. Receipts, motherfucker. Receipts. National Weather Service rain totals. Grosse Pointe Farms, which is unreliable. City Airport, which is reliable. Metro Airport, you know. None of these rain totals are true. There wasn't 8 inches storm of the century. There wasn't 5 inches in 2023. It's bullshit. It was 2.5 inches in 2023. But they all just get together and fucking lie. And I like federal money coming in here if it was spent on us. So this woman's babies didn't die. So I said, bookmark. Your sister got nothing. Her basement flooded out. Red got $1,300. We got $50 million left over. And they had to get rid of it, so they voted on it in city council in November when this woman was calling for some help. What's the money for? What did they decide they're going to do with the $50 million? Low-income housing and homeless shelters. Where is it?
We got speed bumps, Charlie.
This, like, hey, Rakebrandt, Mike Rakebrandt, retired NYPD homicide detective and co-host of 7.5 Radio. You ever heard of shit like this, Mike?
Oh yeah, this is what they do. They use consulting companies as a means to launder the money. So whatever project it is they're looking at doing, flooding or infrastructure or whatever general term you want to use, the politician will create a consulting company. Either his wife is the one running it, or his friend, or somebody close to him is the one running it. And the consulting company will get 20 of that 50 million to draft a report about how they need to do these things, to fix these things, to make this better, whatever it is. And then that'll come back, that report will come back, and then they'll commission another report to reward some other donor. And by the time you get done, maybe out of that 50 million, you got 5 million actually going to infrastructure, which is nowhere near enough to do any real work or any real good.
And the time has passed, so everybody's either forgotten about it or moved on to the next disaster or the next challenge. That's the timing of it.
Oh man, my head's spinning. Going back to the fake homicide totals, Mike. In 2019, the mayor again convenes the yapping poodles of the media. And, I'm so fantastic that with less police and falling revenue, I've actually increased response times to 911 calls. I don't know how you make less arrests, you have less cops, and your response time's going up. So I went through 2 years of 1 million data points, 1 million 911 calls. Yeah, we lowered it to near the national average, blah, blah, blah. So I noticed there were 10,000 traffic stops included in the 911 calls. First of all, nobody calls 911 and says, pull me over. All right? It doesn't belong in there. The average response time to a traffic stop, this is just an average, I'm just going to round off. It's approximately 0.00 seconds. You throw 10,000 of them motherfuckers in there. Here's what it was for priority 2, which is, tell them what a priority 2 is, bro.
That's like violence in action, crime in action, crime
Okay.
actually happening at that moment.
God, I love having fucking regular talking guys that know shit. Fucking violent shit in action. Okay. When you take out the 0.00, it wasn't 20 minutes response time to serious crime in action. It wasn't 20 minutes. It was 55 minutes. And yet, I just got an email from a magazine in London. They're like, could you write what you think is really going on there? I don't know why they're looking, right? And I don't know. I don't know. I don't got a lot of good to say about this. This is what we're seeing in Washington. I've been railing on this since I used to be a feature writer. And then you do feature stories of Chris in the neighborhood, and it breaks your fucking heart.
But those stories also served as insight into the realities of what people go through. People that don't experience certain things are totally detached and unaware. So there was value in that story. And it also it would shine a light on the realities of what the departments were or were not doing. And those don't exist anymore.
I said to my wife, like when I started noticing this here in Detroit, I go, babe, I'm not a investigative reporter. And she goes, well, you are now because the community needs it. And it's just bitten me. And now you just remember this. Now you want to bullshit your way into the governor's office. The difference between Whitmer's just vacant, doesn't know what I'll sign it. I'll make a TikTok video, vote for me. This guy knows how to manipulate it. This guy, when he was the deputy, a CEO of the county, it got raided by the feds. They took everything out of the building. When he was in charge of the hospital, the largest Medicaid fraud settlement at that time in American history. When he was at the prosecutor's office, there was a grand jury, right? When he came to Detroit, grand jury for that demolition money with the poison growing. This is serious shit that nobody was listening to. Now now you guys remember, FBI wouldn't take these crime numbers. Mike Rakebrandt. If you want to fuck with me, you got to fuck with Mike. Mike's the guy, right? You can't impugn this guy. You tell me. Okay, governor?
No.
Governor?
But you look, Charlie, Greene County Prosecutor's Office, remember there was the destruction of records that were not supposed to be destroyed. And then what did they do with that? The money when he was on the DPS board. Then he went to DMC. So the trail.
Smart bus?
The smart. And then, here DMC and then at the city of Detroit. So when he leaves is when everybody starts paying attention to what he actually did when he was there. And it's not positive.
Yeah, looking through the budgets last night, we would be out of money without that. Okay, Biden sent his buddies, right? All the states got money, but 5 specific cities got an extra $1 billion for COVID. $1 billion. New York, you would expect that, right, Mike?
Yep.
LA, you would expect LA, big ass fucking city, right? Yep. Population, what is LA now? Fucking 4? New York's 8, LA's 4, Chicago got some, they're about 2.5. Philly got some, they're about 1.5. And we got $1 billion and we're 600,000.
We had an extra 1,300 people. So.
Oh yeah, we got 1,300 illegals coming in here. And now the population's shrinking again. Another bullshit story.
It is.
So without this money, we would be back in the red and in deep trouble, and it's coming. And again, a man in the neighborhood can't get a call from the detective. I called the detective, couldn't get a call from the detective. The woman in the neighborhood had no place to stay and couldn't get a call. It's phony.
But Charlie, I say this all the time. How many nonprofit organizations do we have in this state? We have more than 70,000 organizations. And yet we still have the same number of problems. Homeless people, they're hungry, they're undereducated, all of these issues. So what are these organizations doing? Where's the oversight outside of paying their C-suite executives? Like, what is happening?
I think Mike told you. They're siphoning it. Mike, what's the answer, man? You got an answer, copper? Mister, I can solve any issue. What's the answer, bro?
It comes from, it's you, Charlie. It's you. It's Karen. It's everyday citizens getting up and demanding something different and holding them accountable, not letting them just give you some bullshit narrative and walking away from it. It's citizen investigators looking at these NGOs that are taking all this money because what they're doing is just laundering money. That's all they're doing. It's the same in New York. New York was almost bankrupt. They were going to get ready to go bankrupt when COVID hit. That money saved New York. Otherwise, it would have been completely bankrupt, the city and the state. You know, it's you got to hold them accountable. They got to dig in and hold them accountable. And what an awful shame. The two people you showed today, the man with his son and those little babies that died, that is the actual human cost of what happens when you're not paying attention, when you're not electing decent people to do the right things, when you have a corrupt and inept government. That's exactly what happens. It is a very real human cost, and that's it right there.
I'm going to add something about Tatiana Williams, whose kids died. Did you see the presser with Duggan? He made a comment about how she called in November, but she never called back, almost blaming her. And I don't know, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, well, how many times do we have to call? What's the number? Because then I'll just hang up and call back and hang up and call back until it's acceptable for you.
Wow.
I thought it was bullshit.
Well, now, she gave an interview to Channel 7, right? Do we have a little clip where she can speak for herself? Thank you, Channel 7, for letting us use this.
I asked everybody for help. I called out of state. I called cities I didn't know. I called cities people asked me to call. I even asked Detroit. I've been on cam list for the longest. Everybody now wants to help. After I lost 2 kids, I've been asked for help. I feel like it wasn't daytime. I did everything I was supposed to do.
That shouldn't be, Charlie. It should not exist. But I told you, Charlie, about the time I was on my way home. I saw a lady and 2 kids sitting in a parking lot on a suitcase. And something made me just go around the block. And I pulled up and I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but are you okay? And the lady said, no. She said, our home burned. We lost everything. Red Cross gave us enough for a motel for 2 days. She says, and I don't know what to do. I gave her all the cash that I had. But where is what they call closing the loop? If you give somebody enough money for 2 days knowing that they don't have a home, what's going to happen after those 2 days? But nobody cares. I've got you off of my books. I've given you something and I moved on to the next person. But where's the connectivity, the sustainability of support and resources for that?
Well, we can't take care of people their whole lives. So
I understand that.
You got to get her focused. You got to get her some place for her kids and then get them to something to eat. And then I thought with these tens and tens and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars that there's a process, because she's clean, living in a van. She's clean, right? Obviously, she's not a dope addict, right? It's like down on your luck, like my mom was down on her luck, and nowhere to turn. She'd never call back. What'd she just say? I told you, like they said, they had 3 contacts. It's more than that, right? You just heard my friend call up. There's supposed to be a place for you, and you taught her that it's not even worth reaching out. That's what they did.
But Charlie, people are quick to distance themselves from circumstances that they think will never impact them. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
It turns out to be true. You'll be back, right?
You got it. Whatever you need, I'm always available.
Okay, brother.
Anything I can do to help.
Thank you. And, maybe call City Hall and give them a few fucking pointers how to turn the city around. Because everybody now sees it. It's been a fairy tale. Yeah, there's drywall up and some hipsters living in lofts, but it's horrible for people in the neighborhood, and you ain't listening. And the leaders of the neighborhoods, you're paying them. You're paying them. Trust me, those 2 people are real. All right. Love you all. Better days. Kiss your babies. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, brother.